Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. If you're new here, I'm glad to have you. This podcast was formed to collectively build a bank of stories from normal people sharing their nonlinear paths. Unfortunately, social media paints a narrow picture of what success looks like, so I'm doing my best to spread the news that changing course is common, and you don't have to know what you want to do the rest of your life at 18. If you're a parent worried about your young adult and whether their path is leading them to success, you're in the right place. I'm a therapeutic consultant who works with young adults to connect them with resources that'll help them get back on a better path. So if you're curious, let's chat. You can schedule a free consultation through my website, which you can find the link for in the show notes. Today, my guest is Justin Levine. Justin is a 27-year-old former program participant who, within 10 years, finds himself back working at the program where he graduated high school from and moonlights as a pacer for elite runners training in the Salt Lake City areas. Honestly, he could not have two vastly different career paths. He's truthful about his avoidance in adolescence, and then he switches gears to talk vulnerably about what it took in treatment for things to change for him, and that once he did start to lean in, how things really opened up for the path that he ended up kind of following in the last 10 years. So let's not wait any longer. Here's Justin. All right, Justin, thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We were just kind of joking behind the scenes about long time no see. I actually saw you at the Yada conference last year. That was the first time that I met you, and had the opportunity to kind of hear a little bit about your story. But I'm so excited to sit down and just kind of talk with you one-on-one about your personal experience.
Great. Yeah, I'm excited to share.
Okay. All right, let's just jump in. We're going to make this a comfortable conversation, and it's going to fly by. He's like, yeah, right.
Hey, I'm a talker, so no worries. It won't be a time constraint thing.
Okay. Well, I will try to keep us on track. With that said, why don't you actually tell the audience, first and foremost, I think it's helpful to just kind of share for context purposes, where did you grow up?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Boca Raton, Florida, so down south, about an hour north from Miami, and was there. My family's bounced around. I was actually born in California, in Mountain View area, and then my family's from New York and New Jersey, so we moved back. That's where my two brothers were born, and then my dad got a new job that brought us to Florida. So
wow,
that was kind of a trajectory. I've been to all corners.
Well, and now Utah.
Yes, and now Utah, and I went to college in Maine, so literally all corners. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we're going to get to that too. So let's start with, how did you get from Florida to Utah? What was going on in your life? I mean, just give us even honestly some of the like logistical details. How old were you? What was happening? Where did you end up going?
Great. Yeah, to even start just right before then, yeah, pretty much growing up in Florida from sixth grade on. I was a pretty heavy runner right from the bat. My dad ran in college, and so I was pretty committed to that. On top of, in Florida, year-round sports allow for playing soccer, baseball, basketball, etc. So I was doing that year-round, and then kind of fell to realize track was the passion and perhaps my gift. And that kind of drove the initial kind of focus. On top of, my parents are very education based, so big in school. Mom always being willing, to help with school projects, make sure things are done well. Kind of set the tone to where I didn't really get a B in school until high school. So come around sophomore year, when AP classes, tracks ramping up, and all the expectations mounting, things got pretty overwhelming. So I was around, I guess, 15, 16 years old. And when kind of all of that hit all at once, I wasn't prepared for it, nor was the time. I was about 10 years ago now. I'm 27. So back then, the stigma and things didn't really kind of help, because I didn't know about any mental health type services that were out there, nor was I comfortable, nor was my family comfortable. So we tried outpatient services for the anxiety that I was developing. And I've always been, I can be a people pleaser, and it was so easy for me to just yes people in person and then not be held accountable at home. So I didn't really work through it. It just kind of turned my back to the fire. And after a while, things kept mounting and mounting, and I was getting better at running. So the pressure was more. My dad was my coach. So that really created quite the uncomfortable dynamic of dad coach relationship. And my parents being such kind of type A, motivated, more perfectionistic tendency people, that definitely kind of got passed down to me to enough of a degree that, yeah, I just really hit that wall. So sophomore year, I pretty much kind of had enough, where I was tired of how everything that I was doing just never seemed like enough, whether it was at home or elsewhere. I hadn't developed, I played on so many sports teams that actually hurt me socially, to be honest, because I was bouncing between every team that I never had time to make real long-term kind of sincere friendships. They were a lot more superficial, and yeah, you meet a guy one day and then you're on the next team the next 2 months from then. And so anyway, bouncing around, all of that kind of led to me feeling stuck. And I didn't have any outlets to turn to. And because outpatient wasn't working, I pretty much just resorted to getting all upset at the world, getting myself in trouble. And that was the catalyst to where my parents were like, all right, enough's enough. We're going to ship him out to go find assistance and help. So I first went to SUS of the Carolinas wilderness program in Asheville. Excellent program. My therapist was Brandon Moffitt, who's pretty well known now in the industry. He started his own school and things, and I just knew him as the guy that brought his dog, and we'd had great chats over firewood out in the middle of the woods. And then my parents are very big research-based people, so they looked across the entire country at the best possible option for my next step. I was really excited, thinking I'd get to go right back home. And again, being what we'd call at Telos, Arbiter Institute must be seen as box, I didn't want anyone to know that I had ever left. So I got about every fire trap and everything in between in like 12 days in wilderness done. The whole school booklet, everything, thinking I'd
Oh
just
my
get to go
gosh.
home. And that was just not how that works, because therapy takes time. So parents looked at the next step, and that turned out to be Telos out in Utah, especially with the sports basis, continuing the athletics that I had grown up on, and really kind of getting a little fresh start out in a new setting with new friends, etc.
Yeah. Well, and can I ask you this question too? Because you're describing like, hey, this didn't really happen until your sophomore year. So you're still like in the throes of high school, like you said, like how quickly can I get back and nobody's going to even notice that I was gone? Oftentimes, and I work with young adults only, and so the young adults are making the decision, but it sounds like your parents picked Telos for you. And so I'm curious from your perspective, well, I just want to hear how it was for you because I
Sure.
think that, there's such an influence right now of messaging out there that is like, hey, when parents are making informed decisions with the best, with the information that they have for the care of their child, that when we don't have the input of the child, it feels like sometimes we're missing the mark. But I mean, personally, just in the experience that I have with the young adults that I work, it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm asking you this question. How was Telos for you? Because you just raved about Seuss too. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Telos.
Yeah. So Telos, yeah, I mean, I had a fantastic experience, but like anyone else, Telos had to kind of work with, the gritty stuff that I hadn't been willing to address. Again, I could pass off, especially even back then, as having debilitating anxiety. I wasn't a home wrecker. I wasn't a destructive person at school. So a lot of my pretty intense stuff flew under the radar, and only I knew or my parents that had to deal with it. So that's, as you know, pretty unique amongst kids that go to a residential program in that it wasn't obvious to the community. Most times it's, okay, well, it's a general consensus that we need to find an alternative, where my parents luckily had the means to look at different options that aren't always provided, especially to local kids in Florida. So in terms, yeah, of Telos, it was hard at first because I had to get used to being uncomfortable, which I was very good at avoiding and dodging and dancing around. I had to face things head on, and my parents and I had to work through our stuff that for the longest time was never a, we're going to work together to figure this out. It was more of a, well, we're just kind of trying to attack random things that are being thrown at us and not hitting a lot of the roots. So it was a struggle. I mean, the first many months, I used to have a pretty anxious kind of smile where it was hard for me to be genuine because I was so uncomfortable to do so, that I was in this trauma group where I was able to address a bit about what I'd experienced in that way, of why I was so afraid of adults or afraid to be sincere. And seeing the other students and how open and genuine they were allowed me to feel comfortable. We call it emotional safety, in that capacity to then share my story and realize, wow, I'm not alone. Because it always felt like I was the only one dealing with things. I was the only one that had all of these, I was kind of a lone ranger out running my own race. And then meeting kids that, my parents would always say, like, they had no idea what they would expect when they showed up to Telos, like what the kids would be like. And they were amazed that it's truthfully kids that go to programs, kids that, could benefit from programs, really are all kids for one. But yeah, just typical high school kids that you would think, wow, I never would have noticed or never would have known, oftentimes is the case. And I think that's one thing that the industry, isn't known for is, hey, these aren't the extreme, kids all the time. It's more often not the case where,
Yeah.
just wrong place, wrong time, wrong experiences can kind of lead kids down, a path of struggle. And sometimes it's genetic. I mean, it's not even the fault. So yeah, in terms of Telos, to answer your actual question about what's so great about Telos, the normalization piece is key. Telos did a lot of things that didn't make me feel like I was institutionalized. They made me feel like I could become and see the future where I'd be an active member of society and productive. A lot of the things like having sports teams here that are actually UHSAA accredited, so we compete in the high school system, is very unique. And actually, as I was transitioning out of Telos after a while, I was able to go to the public school down the street and be a dual student at both. So having that flexibility, I've seen a lot of programs that unfortunately don't have the means or perhaps the bandwidth, et cetera. But if there isn't much normalization, you feel institutionalized, you feel trapped, and your ceiling kind of gets reduced. You start to limit yourself quite a bit.
Okay, just so I can summarize some of the key points that I just heard from you too, is that in common pieces. One, there's this image that's portrayed that a lot of those that are in residential treatment program are strictly behavioral or oppositional type clients, right? They're the ones that are really acting out. But your experience was, because there was that emotional safety, actually there's more people like me than I realized, right? It's like we look like we've got it together from the outside, but on the inside, the anxiety is crushing us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like an actual pretty common, almost high school experience, in the sense that you're not missing some of those common things. But the focus obviously is that everybody that's there was in a position where we're like, hey, what we tried at home was not working. We got to get together. We need to provide the space for you to stop masking, right? You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to just open up and be okay to get help. Otherwise, you're going to continue to be on this fast track. Like you said, you're on your own race, this Lone Ranger, and I'm watching you run towards a cliff, which is Justin, please don't do that. Reroute, redirect, something like that. So anyways, just in terms of thinking that pace is not sustainable. And so getting the support that you need. The other thing that I was also hearing you say too, and I just want to highlight it, is that it's often, even though, again, the perception of who's in treatment, it's easy for us to feel other than, right? I don't really know why I'm here. I'm the anxious person. I don't have the same type of issues as some of these other people. And then that just kind of reinforces this, the ability to avoid doing the work that needs to be done. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that I heard you say that. So I'm going to ask another question. I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. You said that you got to be duly enrolled at the local public high school, which sounds so badass. And you kind of already hinted too that you went to college in Maine. So give us a little bit of the well, how did you end up from being at Telos to being duly enrolled to then making it to college in Maine?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So, it took a long time. I was at Telos probably a year and a half, actually, with a couple therapist changes and different things before I went to our transition house that we call Anthem. And at Anthem is kind of that point when you're on the edge of 18 to where you're now looking at, the next potential steps post high school. And because I was doing well in the Telos environment, there was no reason for me to get up and, leave and go right back to the setting, that I was prior in, that doesn't have all these support networks and different things. So it made perfect sense, and it worked out in my case to just kind of stick around a little bit and finish high school here. And the biggest limitation, honestly, as I got back passionate about running, because one of my favorite stories about my experience at Telos was I quit running sophomore year and I was never going to run again, even though I, in 8th grade, I ran a 5:11 mile. 9th grade, I was running 4:49. So I was, one of those next guys that, scouts and things could be looking at and potentially, running at the collegiate level, et cetera. And then I just threw it all away and said, I'm done, because it became a job rather than fun. So Telos found out my times naturally. We have a really great principal. His name's Kevin, and he does his homework. So he found out, my times and things and asked me if I wanted to run. And I said, absolutely not. I was like, that's a thing of my past. I enjoyed it at that moment, but it's not very enjoyable for me. So no thanks. But he didn't give up there. So he asked, well, why don't you just run for fun? And I was like, run for fun? It's fun to win, but running is exhausting. It's stressful. It's anxiety inducing. And he kind of, illustrated those are a lot of the reasons that you should run, because that's some of the benefit, is working through those things and finding the therapeutic benefit. So I started giving it a try. Built back. At first, I didn't realize altitude was a thing, so I thought I was just crazy out of shape. And so it was very humbling. But then I kind of worked towards, developing that skill set again and building the endurance one day at a time. And then that's where senior year we were looking at, where I, didn't have many Telos teammates that were at that level, to where we looked at the public school system nearby and tried to see if I could run for their team. So that was the start. The state, actually, we have here in Utah, there's a lot of transfer rules and things. So because I was a boarding school kid instead of a public school and in-state student, I wasn't allowed actually to compete for the local high school, but they made an agreement that I could train with those guys and then compete for Telos. So it actually was a win-win. Since I trained with top talent, took a couple classes, got slowly reintegrated back into a co-ed school, which for one, Telos is an all-boys school. So that was an important adjustment ahead of college. And yeah, met really good friends, went to prom at the local school, created friends that are still, we're tight buddies to this day. So the key was also it created a network for then me to return to Utah, because a lot of kids that are in programs, they realize all their friends in a program are from all over the country, sometimes all over the world. So you don't have a network to potentially return generally outside of the school itself. So because I had that friend group I now created and got to know, the different parents would take me to the track meets, etc., I had a new kind of safety net and, a network here that would help me thrive. So after I started figuring that out, I ran state. I won state for Telos in the 2 mile, and then looked at college offerings, of which was the original plan, right? And then I kind of, went off course and then found the course again back running on the track. And reached out to different schools. My dad ran for a college called Brandeis in Boston, so he is very familiar with the Northeast. And he loved the idea of trying to put, education first as most important in my family. So he wanted, the best school I could get into for me to attend that I also could run for. And the school, Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, was the perfect fit. They call it a little Ivy. The Ivy League is the D1 system, and the Little Ivy is the D3 schools version. So the Amherst, Williams, Bowdoin, Colby, if you're familiar, Bates is in there. And it was perfect because it was small school, small network, small classes. You got to know your teachers. I had all the accommodations because they were very progressive in that 10 years ago. So that helped in my classes. I had note-taking assistants and extra time on tests because it was really hard with anxiety to pick an answer and other things that just took time. So yeah, transition. I didn't make it easy for myself. I studied neuroscience in college. And after, going to, a random school in Utah and stopped taking AP classes, it was definitely baptism by fire. But I hung in there, and I had a great advisor actually that wound up choosing me for my senior thesis over some of the other students with better grades, because we had such a great relationship built, where I went to her and was like, I don't think I'm cut out for neuroscience. I got a D+ on the first exam. It was impossible. I pretty much had to memorize the textbook, it felt like. And she said, hey, well, why do you want to do it? And I was like, well, it's fascinating. And, it's the most interesting kind of major that I've done my research for. And she's like, great, you'll figure it out. So I've had many mentors in my life that have guided me, because if she said, yeah, you're not cut out for this, you should switch majors, that could have been it. And the same with running in Utah, running at Telos. But yeah, I've had lots of mentors in my life that have really helped guided me and come in right at the critical moments.
Okay. I think that's so, I so appreciate you talking about that, because that's very important, especially for, honestly, irrelevant to people that have been in treatment environments. I think just finding mentorship in life, especially in young adulthood, is so important for the kind of your path. Like you said, people can champion you, or they might be, directing you towards, a certain path that may not be where you want to lead. So just having somebody that really is kind of this neutral but supportive person could be really beneficial for you. And I always like that when it's not a family member, because now you don't have the emotional attachment or any of the judgment or history or anything like that. So if you have good connection with an adult, obviously you want to lean on that. So that's awesome that your advisor ended up being kind of in that role for you. So Maine, now back to Utah. How did that happen?
Yeah. So how did I kind of return back? So
Yeah.
At first I was looking at just different job internships for the summer. And honestly, I was a little bit lazy and just thought, maybe Telos will take me back and, I could work in some capacity. I love Utah. I had, all of these buddies now in the community. and yeah, had different roles. I started as an intern one summer, just doing data input. Then I worked, as one of the floor staff. I worked as a PE coach a different summer. Each summer I returned to Utah to work at Telos. So I really never left. I just would check out. I usually call my experience the Hotel California effect, because I could check out, but I could never leave. So I kept returning in all different capacities and roles. And then after senior year, so running had really kicked off. In college, I got way better. Like my mile time, I think in high school was 4:40. And by senior year in college, I could run that pace for a 5K. So that got me to the national championship in the 5,000 meter in indoor track in 2020. I was actually the last man, which is a really cool story. How it works in D3 small school is it's just top 20 times make nationals. And I was, I think, 29th going into what they call the last chance meet, where you can try to, run your fastest and get on that podium. And I literally got the last spot. So I took number 20, 1442 5K out to North Carolina. And then that's when COVID hit, actually. So the race was canceled. I never ran at nationals, but it was actually such a blessing because I was totally burned out, to be honest. I had nothing left in the tank. So I made it to nationals. That took all of me. And then it was such a blessing. They even gave all of us All-American for just going to nationals that year, which usually nationals All-American is top 8. So I got awarded that as the 20th guy. And that number 1 guy, actually, he was just in the Olympics. His name's Matthew Wilkinson. Anyway, lots of running stories I could share. But he made the U.S. team as a D3 runner, which was big time. And I was supposed to face him. He would have kicked my butt. But we were there in North Carolina the same day. We just never raced. So, yeah. So that kind of was the end there, to where my running career ended with 1 season of outdoor eligibility. Was a big fuel as well, because thinking coming to Utah, I thought maybe I'd run as a grad transfer at a Utah university, even go D1. Mm-hmm. So one other quick story to share is I wanted to consider advancing my education and going to BYU. They were a great running program. They're typically top 10 in the country, men and women. Recently, last year, they won both men and women's titles. So they're legit. And coming, at the D3, that's, big fish, small pond. These guys, big pond, big fish. So I got humbled real quick, which I already knew because I raced a lot of these guys in high school in Utah. But I ran with them that summer, tried to then walk onto the team, wound up actually not getting into the PhD program I applied for in clinical psych, but got the coolest job ever and became the pacer for the women's team at BYU. So you might not have known that about me, but I've trained all of their runners since 2020 and helped with a lot of their national championship victories. And from that, I've trained a lot of Nike runners and Adidas runners and pro runners that come to the state. So my side hustle that a lot of the people in the running world know, these two worlds of, my mental health work and experience and my running experience are two completely separate identities almost. But it's my favorite thing to share, mostly because it's allowed me to give back to the community here that did so much for me.
Wow.
Is one of my favorite things about why I'm so grateful I get to pace and help out all these, incredible athletes.
I did not know about that side hustle. That does feel like, which part of Justin are you actually, like, who are you speaking with? It depends on where you are, right? Like, that's so fun. Mm-hmm. So vastly different, yet what I'm hearing too is like the theme inherently for both is that it's not about therapy, but it's about therapeutic experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And my driver is just helping people. That's always been how I found my purpose. So wanting to give back to Telos, wanting to give back to the athletes. I've just always been that kind of guy that sees most joy and fulfillment in kind of others' success. And my success being a part of that. But being a cross-country runner and, loving the team mentality, just any of my jobs or roles are always guided towards trying to do something that, can be helpful and give back. So I've been on the repentance tour, I call it sometimes, where it's like, all right, I was a knucklehead, as a kid. So, do as much, to give back, kind of fills my heart with joy. And yeah, it's created lots of cool opportunities. This morning, I actually ran with Connor Mance, who's the best marathoner in the United States, and he kicked my trash. We went like 9 miles at 6:40 pace, and I'm just getting back from injury. So that for me was like a sprint, and for him it was a walk in the park.
Wow.
So yeah, the amount of opportunity to keep me running here in Utah, I mean, it's becoming a hub actually to share, where all pro runners are seeing the success that Utah is outputting. And a lot of people are moving to Park City and different things. So more and more people to meet, more and more people to grow the network.
Oh, so cool. Okay. Last question, just to wrap up. And you said it, this is 10 years ago, right? Over 10 years when this kind of treatment journey started. If your 15, 16, 17-year-old self could see you now, what do you think he would say?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I'd be pleasantly surprised because, I mean, especially my dreams as a kid, many of them have come true, especially in the running space. I mean, ever since I was in 5th grade, my dad's cried about 3 times. And one of them was showing me the state newspaper saying like, you're going to win this, state championship. And that was in Florida. So the places and the things have changed, but the goals have always stayed the same and the dreams. And yeah, getting to live out on my own in a fun state with really good friends and having gone to college, succeeded in that regard. And now I have a job, as I didn't actually mention, at Telos, where I'm the director of all the fitness on campus. So I've continued to kind of work my way up the totem pole, or I could say work my way up the hierarchy, and continue, to try to build upon my success, never kind of, stay satisfied with what I'd done and really live in the moment. I'd be so impressed. Especially there were some dark days that I can still remember, and they almost feel surreal. Truthfully, that's how far I've come, that it's like, that was my life, really? Like, I was really that distraught, that disengaged, that much of honestly, a problem. And now I feel like I've come to a point of maturity. I've come to a point where I'm more well-spoken, and I can kind of share a bit of my light and my passion. And yeah, I'm very grateful for this kind of opportunity, because they're few and far between. There's been many close calls actually in the running space where I've almost been on podcasts and things, but I'm more grateful because I think this message is more powerful than just the message of, oh, I train this runner and that runner, etc. Because the full story is the most impactful. So yeah, I'd be amazed, shocked, happy, all the emotions, but again, never satisfied. And, in 20 years, I'll probably look back to when I was 27 now and say, man, look at what's happened in those 20 years. That's the goal anyway, right?
Right. Definitely. Well, Justin, thank you again for taking the time to share a part of your journey and for honestly doing the cool things that you're doing. And honestly, you would not be where you were right now if you hadn't leaned in. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway for me is at some point you made the decision, I can't fight this anymore. I can't hide this anymore. I actually have to show up and do the work. And I know that without even being there, that was probably a tremendous effort and vulnerability. And so just having witnessed getting to meet you at the conference last year and then obviously sitting down now to be able to have this interview, it's evidenced to me that you took the time and actually did the work.
Yep, that's runners know best. There's no shortcuts. You can't buy fitness and you can't fake it. So that mentality really, pulled me through, because that's the same with therapy. It's the same with most things in life. That, like you said, you got to put in the work to see the reward. And if you try fast, little shortcuts here and there, you wind up starting right back from scratch. You redo the course, or you have to hop onto a worse part of the course to get back to where the normal flatland is. So yeah, again, thanks for having me. This has been awesome. Anytime, I'm always around and always willing to share.
Love it. Well, thank you again. And we'll make sure that we have, for anybody that's interested, if they do want to connect with you and you feel comfortable having them reach out to you, we'll have your contact in the show notes. But otherwise, keep doing the amazing work that you're doing.
Great. And yeah, you can add my Instagram if you'd like, because it has a lot of the more running based, philosophy, but I've been getting a bit more involved in kind of, mental health politics and reform is kind of where my page is transitioning to. So I went to the US Capitol to talk to different representatives and push for, better mental health legislation. I've gone to the Utah State Capitol. So a good resource. There's actually going to be an article coming out on the 15th that I did. I think it might be the New York Post or the Manhattan Institute, I know, is pioneering it. So there's more to come. This is only the beginning of me hopefully being able to share my story and create positive influence.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. You're awesome. We'll talk soon.
Yes. Thanks again.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.